real quick, we're going to make this part short just because we got so much stuff that I'm looking forward to covering. But how did you end up in the world of recruiting and and have that walk into how the ranch came about?
I was running 130 clothing stores for a very wild and crazy disco-oriented clothing company called the Merry-Go-Round way back in the day. Okay, you're probably not old enough to even remember that. And and a guy came in and and talked to me, and he had me sell him some clothing. And at the end of that whole thing, he said, "You ought to be a recruiter." And the technique that he used is something that I teach now to other owners in terms of going into retail operations and also restaurants. There are three industries that consistently produce the highest performance people in our industry. And hospitality is number one, or retail is number one, hospitality is number two, and brokerage services is number three. Anyway, I sat down and met him at his hotel, and we did a bunch of shots together. And before I knew it, he had convinced me to go into recruiting, and I followed his lead, and I joined a company that had 150 recruiters in 5 offices. There were 40 recruiters in my office. I knew nothing about accounting and finance. I was put on an accounting and finance desk. I said to my boss, Jerry Hellebush, who later became a partner of mine and still owns the largest search firm here in Kansas City called Morgan Hunter. And I said, I don't know squat about accounting. He said, well, we offer 40 hours of tutorial a month in accounting just to get you prepared. I said, 40 hours. He said, your ass is going to be interviewing 40 accountants every month, and you're going to be taking intense notes. And we're going to make sure that you only interview the same title like 5 times in a row so you can learn how to separate the difference between excellence and mediocrity in the way that guys describe the level of performance that they have. And so that's how I got started. And 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 I failed very early in the deal. I did not make a placement for 5.5 months. I had more activity level than anybody else. I had more applicants, more job orders, more send outs, but nothing was hitting. And I was $27,440 in draw, and I decided to quit. And so there were so many days where I'd pull into the parking lot and I'd circle it like 3 or 4 times before I'd actually park my car and and actually go to work. But there came a time where I turned in my notice and I stayed out for 2 days before I returned. But during those 2 days, because my boss said, you have the talent, you're just not doing something right. Of course, my answer was, I'm doing everything that you told me to do, which is everything that the guy sitting next to me is doing and the guy sitting on the other side of me is doing. Anyway, the bottom line is I brought a Radio Shack tape recorder. Back then it was a cassette tape recorder, and a little plug-in suction cup attachment that I could put on my telephone to record the phone calls that I made. And I did that for a week, and I ended up hearing people doing this. You could actually see them rolling their eyes in their head based on the stuff that I was saying. And just to shorten this all up, I was pushing instead of pulling. Okay. I was putting my agenda out there instead of finding out first what other people wanted, either on the client side or the candidate side. When I was marketing, I've got a candidate that just moved to town from Baltimore, and we think he's really strong and he's looking for a good place to hang his hat. And I was wondering whether or not you may have an opening right now. I realized that that was being interpreted by the client as, so you and your candidate are trying to find this guy a job, right? And you're going to charge me $18,000 to help this guy out. Is that right? It was all incongruent. It was all back asswards. So I made some changes and I learned how to speak congruently in their agenda. And again, to make a long story short, I put a system together and I started to do well. The first month after I started doing things, a bunch of stuff closed, and I built $124,000 in a 6-week period of time. That was back when fees were 14 grand, and that was for a senior, controller, or a VP of finance, it was back in the day. Anyway, it worked, and my boss noticed it, and he had me train other people. I ended up staying on a desk, but becoming the director of training for the company, and we did good. And I realized that you don't have to be a superstar personality in this business. You don't have to be a magnet, a natural magnet to people. If you're an average individual that utilizes techniques that cause other people to spill their guts on what their purest views are about what they want in their career before you pitch, you'll make a lot of money. So that was the beginning of Morgan methodology. And then I saw a guy named Steve Finkel at a program, and he inspired me to be a speaker, maybe not to speak what he speaks, but to be a speaker because there weren't many choices out there. And then I started getting asked to sit on panels, high performance panels. High performance back then, I think my best year was close to 529, I think was my best year. But that was based on $12,000 fees. At that time, we were doing 4 or 5 deals a month. And if you're interested later on, I'll tell you why that is so different from it is today. But anyway, that was the beginning of Morgan methodology. I partnered with my manager. We opened up this Morgan Hunter Corporation, which still exists. And it's about a 40-desk operation, does about 40 million a year in multiple disciplines and so forth. But the bug of teaching bit me, and I sold my portion to Jerry and went out and built Morgan Consulting Group.
Well,
So
I just want to dive into the story real quick. So first of all, like 5 months in, you have made a placement. So many other recruiting managers would be looking at that recruiter and like, we need to get rid of this person. But your activity level was different compared to everybody else because I feel like that was a little bit my story too. But at the same time, when you put in your notice, you took your 2 days off, you came back and you tape recorded yourself. Where did that idea even come from? To like,
because I knew I was a killer. In I had run 130 clothing stores. I had run 9 steak restaurants. Everything that I touched, I used the identical philosophy of what now is a huge sign that goes across almost 2 walls of the corner in our office, and it says, "Watch the crowd and move in the opposite direction." So I did that in all of my previous career, and it brought a lot of revenue in by just getting out of the norm of what everybody else did in terms of operations. And so that became the philosophy that I needed to follow. And I was convinced that I had the people skills. I grew up on the street, man. I grew up in Queens, New York. And if you're a Billy Joel fan, uh, Corona was like 8 blocks from where I live. And I hustled, and I just said to myself, I've been pretty strong in two other industries. I'm just missing something here. And that missing part became the theme, the central theme of Morgan methodology.
Well,
So,
and I love that because in our industry, I don't know the exact numbers, and you might know this, but so many people barely make it past the first 9 months as a recruiter. Like it's tough. It's a grind, but it's one of the things that I've also seen is the people that have struggled the most in their first few months have also gone on to become successful recruiters compared to other recruiters that first, second month in, they've built like a 50K, everything's going great. They feel like they've knocked it out of the park. Is it because that you just sat down and started really learning the fundamentals is what was different for you?
my fundamental training was good. Okay. In breaking up every phone call that takes place in the doing of a deal, which typically are about 17 phone calls. Okay. Um, I understood the process, but the key factor is where your heart comes from in each one of those calls. Okay. If if I call you and I say, hey Ben, the reason why I'm giving you a call, um, I I I spotted your profile on LinkedIn, and quite frankly, man, it looked like you were almost a perfect fit for one of the clients that we're working on. And if you have a moment, I'd like to tell you a little bit about this, right? Either that on the phone or done by email. The whole purpose of that call is Peter's agenda. I am using you to get something placed for my client. Okay. It's not about you. I'm telling you what the deal is, what my clients are looking for, so that you can pass judgment and you either bump off of me or you bump towards me. But the majority of people, like 85% of people who are pitched with one particular scenario, are going to be bumped off. Okay. It's not a perfect fit. So the average recruiter transactionally just says, okay, well, can we stay in touch? If something else comes up, can I let you know? Yeah, you can let me know. And still, there's no conversation of, in a perfect world, what are the criteria that you would look for in selecting a new job? Or where's the pain right now? And if the phone call begins in that agenda, the reason why I'm giving you a call is because somebody says that you've got a little bit more horsepower than what ABC company is tapping into right now. I don't know if you feel that way, but I just kind of wanted to call you quietly to see if you might have an interest in keeping your ears open to a situation that somebody else thinks might be a stronger fit to your potential. What are your thoughts about that? And then we hear either a yes or a no, or the bullshit of, hey, I always keep my ears open, right? And then a good recruiter says, that's good to hear. But a lot of people I talk to, they don't always keep their ears open. Um, they love what they're doing. And you couldn't pull them out of there with a tow truck. You didn't say that, man. You said you keep your ears open. Why? What's up? What would you add or subtract to what's going on right now that would cause you to say this call is invalid? And you listen. And when people feel that your agenda is understanding who they are and what they want, it's amazing how people open up. But if a recruiter can shut their mouth long enough to listen before going, oh my God, stop there. You are perfect for this. You know what I mean? So you end up building relationships based on being a job doctor, putting them on the examination table and poking a little bit and finding out where it hurts and what kind of health are they looking to achieve job wise. and then structuring a strategy around exposing them to that. But the problem is most recruiters today, if they work for a company, are assigned job orders. So they want to make sure that you're a good fit to that job order. And if you're not, they throw the baby out with the bathwater. Okay. And they go on to the next candidate. They don't have the patience to find out, is the timing right for a phone call like this? And if it's not, how do you feel about staying in touch? Because the average candidate today lasts 29 months before they make another job change. Back when I was coming up, you were a job hopper if you did that. But today, that's just healthy. I need to find better technology. I need to improve my skills. I don't give a shit about loyalty anymore. It's all about me just gaining more stuff so that I am sexier to the next client and so forth. But if somebody takes the time to really strategize, A, somebody's sense of urgency, B, what they really are looking for, you can end up with a candidate for life. I have one candidate, not that I'm on the desk recruiting anymore, except for 1 quarter a month, I go into the office and I kind of rework my chops, right? Just to maintain some credibility. But I've had one candidate that I now have billed. We figured it out a little while ago, almost $1.6 million worth of fees on in 4 placements, taking him from first financial planning and analysis vice president to a controller, then to a CFO, and then ultimately I placed him at Blue Cross Blue Shield for $2.8 million at a 27.5% fee. And he called me while I was 20 years into my career of teaching and said, hey, man, let's do it again. I swear to God, he said, there's only 3 companies that are appropriate for my skills. Okay. I've written a white paper that shows what the problems are based on their financial statements and the fixes that I have fixed prior as a result of going through those problems. And yeah, just do your thing, man. Just call them up and let them know that. Said, okay, let's do it. So
All right. So real quick, let's stop right there. There's one candidate that you've placed multiple times, and those recruiting fees that you've gotten from this one candidate is more than the
1 point,
average amount of money that an average American makes in a lifetime.
I would imagine. I would imagine.
Secondly,
But
secondly,
also understand I started with a high value guy, right? So it's
yep.
not your average full stacker. Okay.
So, but I also want to dig into this too. So I remember my early days of recruiting where it was pound the phone, get to 75, get through 75 candidates as fast as possible. And yeah, I know you're laughing at this. So what you're telling recruiters that has helped you over the longevity of your career, and also, and this will go into training, is to slow the fuck down and spend more time with these people.
Going deeper and slower produces faster placements. Okay. The average amount of time spent on a physical interview, either face to face or by video or by phone, is 27 minutes. Okay. The Morgan method, what we call interview, takes at least an hour because the majority, after getting through everybody's technical skills that they have, the majority of the interview is a portion that we call the wish list. Okay. And that's where we find out the size of a company, the geographics, the corporate culture, the management style, the rate of promotion. I mean, we figure out exactly what this utopian environment is for a candidate. They don't always get it. But what you're left with is a candidate that leaves the shrink's office and says, I don't mind dumping out all of my crap. He understands it, and I will take his advice when I'm done.
Mm.
So, you know, you got a candidate that you place, and then 3 years later, you don't go after him, but she sends you an email saying, I've reached the plateau at this particular company and I'm ready to make a change again. And then you realize that that company has not been a client of yours for a year or so. You haven't had a job order with them. And in your contract or your agreement with them, it states we will be loyal to you for up to 1 year after the last placement and so forth. But if they're past that, then we bring the candidate in. We let him fill out something that says, I came to you, you didn't re-recruit me, and we do it again. But today, there are very few recruiters that have relationships that are career lasting because the average recruiter sticks around for 3 years, right? And they don't do real well. And then the video calls them up and says, we'll give you 125 to be an internal recruiter for us, and they make the swap, you know. So yeah,
Okay.
it's different, man. It's different today.
So fast forward a little bit. So is this why you started the ranch?
No, 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 no.
And for the listeners, what is the ranch?
Well, on a surface level, the ranch is a 75-acre horse farm, so to speak. We grow our own hay for our horses. Um, my side gig is training horses that people consider to be what they call last chance horses. They've hurt somebody, or mentally they've gotten kind of messed up and they're not trainable. And we have a Morgan method training system for horses and so forth, which kind of got passed down through my dad, who was an avid horseman. Um, and we raise sheep, and yeah, so that's what the ranch is.
Okay.
In 1997, after 10 years of doing seminars all over the country and in a number of different countries outside of the States, um, I was doing close to 30 to 40 two-day programs a month, or a year, I'm sorry. And just all over the place, just teaching Morgan methodology. And then in 1997, my life changed pretty dramatically, and I became a single dad. And my boys were 4 and 6 years old, and I had to stop traveling. And so I built this log cabin and the one behind me. And then we hung up a sign that said, if you want training, you got to come to Peter's house. And people came. And then I think when we were together, I showed you a video of the very
You
first
did.
training that we ever had here. We had 175 people, and almost every trainer in the industry sent like a mole, like one of their clients, to like go through the course and so forth. It was so funny because they didn't think I'd find out, but it didn't bother me at all. And yeah, so that's how the ranch started, out of necessity for me not to be able to travel anymore. And I guess I had enough of a following where I was really shocked and surprised that that many people came. So for the next 22 years until COVID arrived, we did about between 8 and 1,200 students a year to the ranch, combination of owners and their people, so forth. Then COVID came, and my wife and I got our ranch back to ourselves, which we really enjoyed. And now we do about 700 to 800 people a year, all by Zoom, and we got the ranch back. So, it was great while it's lasted, but I'm getting older and I'm enjoying my comfort a little bit more. We still do have one company a month, a private company that will come in for a 3-day program at the ranch. But I'm not doing public programs at the ranch anymore with, 20 different companies, everybody sending 2 to 4 people. And I don't get the ability to track their development after that. Now I want to track private client all the way through them adopting the things that they've learned and seeing the results.
So real quick, I want to talk about the tracking in a second, but how many people have traveled to the ranch?
We have had 14,400 students. That could be plus or minus, but based on all of our rosters for every program that we had, Cindy counted them up about 8 months ago in preparation for a new website that we're getting ready to launch. So we want it to be accurate. And 1,100 of them have been owners of search firms and contract consulting firms. And probably 10% of our clients are temp firms, but they're temp firms that have a need to add direct hire. Most temp firms do direct hire by accident. Okay. That's when a client calls and says, hey, if you've got a Hermie, we could certainly use one of those, but they don't do it on purpose. So when they want to develop a division that way, they come to us for that.
So I want to go into like the tracking in a bit, but when it comes to the training that everybody's coming to the ranch or now virtually for, they say it's a little contrarian. What does that mean? And why is that your approach?
Well, again, the philosophy is watch the crowd and move in the opposite direction. So in order to do that, you have to understand what pisses off candidates and what pisses off clients. And then you have to reverse your methodology. And that's what we've done. So on the recruiting side, in Morgan methodology, you are not allowed to pitch a job to a candidate in your first conversation until you have done a full-blown, quote, interview with that candidate. And your mind could be racing during that interview and going, oh my God, this guy is like perfect for ABC company. But you've got to keep your business cool, keep your mouth shut. And then you have to wait a day or so, or 2 days, or whatever you think it needs, and then call the candidate up and say, look, this doesn't happen this quickly, this often. But you know how you mentioned that these were the 4 things that you were looking for? What would be your thoughts if I found a company that provided all 4 of those things and it was within the geographic and yada, 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 and the candidate says, I'm in. And then we say the company has gotten exposure to your background. I did not tell them your name or who you work for, but based on a blind redacted description, they have offered you 2 times to interview with them. Which one of those times would be better for your schedule? And our candidates will say yes without even knowing the name of the company yet. Okay. And after they say that, then we take them through the job order and the description, but we still don't start with the names. We start with the industry and the impact that the industry has, whether the industry is in decline or whether it's in growth, then that company's growth or decline within the industry. And then we just finally get them to a point where we say the name of the company is good, bad, indifferent, any knowledge. Okay. And then we go full bore, So that takes a lot of restraint. It takes a lot of business cool. It's no different. I'm assuming, are you married?
Yes, I am.
Okay. I'm assuming when you found the right woman, you slowed your shit down.
Trying to think now. I think I did.
Well, I doubt that you had the same sense of urgency or objective that you may have found in a bar with somebody that may not have been your life partner. But when you get an inkling that this is a good one, you slow down and you show more etiquette and you take your time. It's what we call business foreplay. Okay. And there are a lot of recruiters that don't have the ability or desire to slow things down that way because they can't see past the job order in front of their nose. And there are so many candidates that we recruit and then reject because they don't fit the job order that we are pitching them, and they lose a candidate. But one of the concepts of Morgan methodology is called pre-recruiting. Okay. And so that's taking candidates that may not fit what you're working on, but are badass candidates, and you put them in bucket B for later on. And you keep watering your little plant and you keep spreading some fertilizer on that person. And until they reach a point, which, according to statistics, every 29 months, somebody is going to say, I think I'm ready for a change. And they come back to you. And they come back to you because the last idiot that called them said, look, I don't know if you're looking to make a change, but I have got a client that I think is just perfect for you. Okay. So what they're looking for is yada, yada. And they just roll their eyes and go, you don't know squat about who I am. And you're already shoving a pill down my throat when you don't even know my symptoms, you know? So they come back to you and they go, this dude is a true blue. I want him to take care of me.
So because you're going deeper on the relationships, you're going deeper on everything, you now have this person for the long run when there's thousands of other recruiters out there in the same space. Like when you're looking at a week,
That's how you build a practice.
how do
Okay.
you, well, okay, I can see you completely changing your desk like this, but how do you duplicate that within your team of recruiters?
Rookies only know what you teach them. That's it. No different than the horses and the mules I train. They only know what you teach them. And if you don't teach them, they grip on to the guy sitting next to them and they follow the way that he or she does it. So it's important when you start a rookie off to let them know that 90% of your time is going to be spent on the phone developing relationships with people. We're looking for the long run, not the short hit. And if you are phone adverse, if you're not the kind of guy that hears your husband or your wife on the phone with some sales guy and it's not going right, and you're not the kind of person that says, honey, give me the phone, okay? Let me talk to this guy. You're not right for this job. You have to look at the phone as being a form of communication that matches up to your strength in being able to connect to people and relate to people. So we got to start with the right hire, okay? And then we have to teach them what the purpose of each call is. So let me ask you, what do you think the purpose of a recruiting call is? How will you know that you did a great recruiting call?
A lot of it depends on, at least for me, how deep I've gone in the conversation with that candidate and how much I've gone with the understanding.
All right. So what you're
But
telling me is you don't pick up the phone until after somebody has responded to what your fingertips have explained to them.
it's a combination of that versus also, you know, when it comes to a cold call, many times I'm catching somebody that's like in the middle of something. So I'll try to reschedule a time to chat with them.
Okay. So you reschedule it and now you're talking to them. What is the end game of that recruiting call? What is the purpose? How will you know that you've done a good job on that call?
Well, two things would be if they're in my niche, if it's something that I could actually place them for, like if there's a job that I can work with them on, or is the job that I currently have, are they a good match? Or is it somebody that I think could be a great relationship as long as they're in the industry? So those
Okay,
are the typically
so
the three things that I'm looking at and I'm thinking of.
2/3 of those three things are what we discourage recruiters to look for in the purpose of their call.
Okay.
So our definition of the purpose of a recruiting call is to determine the truth as to whether a candidate is ready to make a change at the time of the phone call. It's all about wound discovery, career wound discovery. So at that point, I'm not interested in matching their technical skills based on some of the research I've done. I wouldn't be calling a guy if I didn't think that he was in alignment, generally speaking, with the position. But the purpose of the call is to find out why they have an interest in keeping their ears and eyes open. I got to find out the wound. And if the wound is not legitimate, this is why we have people ghost us. This is why we have people turn down jobs. This is why we have people accepting counteroffers. The wound needs to be legitimate enough. The pain needs to be strong enough that they say, if you find me this, this, and this, it will satisfy my hurt that I'm experiencing right now in the job that I have. They will not allow me to progress past where I am right now. They will not allow me to contribute my ideas. They will not value me for the work ethic that I have put into this company. They will not pay me fairly, whatever it is. That's the first thing that has to be determined in a recruiting call. The second thing needs to be skill match. And if they don't match the job that you're working on, okay, let's continue to interview and find out what job they may be viable for and take them to the market. I don't know if you realize this, but we study this stuff, and you know what everybody used to call an MPC call.
Yep.
So we call it a POP call, POP, stands
Okay.
for making a placement on purpose. Okay. And for every one job order that is filled with an assignment that a recruiter gets from a company, 2.7 placements are made by taking a rock star to the market. That's a 270% increase in production. So the marketplace that we have today, even though we think it's slowing down, when you bring a candidate to an employer and you make that employer know that you have spent 3 times as much typical time that you spend in evaluating an individual, and we have determined that she is totally a rarity in the world of quality testing or whatever. And after I realized that, I decided to flip the way that we work. And I asked her, who do you have respect for within your particular niche? 2 companies came to mind. Your company, Ben, was one of those 2 companies. And apparently she's done some homework or research because she referenced your leadership, and she has asked me to coordinate a meeting between you both. Not asking, do you have any openings? Talent has surfaced. You interested in having a phone call with talent? If we make a phone call like that 7 or 8 times a day to appropriate companies, about every 2 days, company's going to say, hell, I'll talk to her. That's how you make a lot of money in this business. Because every time that you pick up a job order that's been posted, there's 4 or 5 other firms that are crawling up the back of your leg working on that job as well. Right?
So there's hundreds of thousands of recruiters across the United States and even more across the globe. Every company has a different set of training, but if you have a team of recruiters that you're looking at implementing this slowing down, finding the pain approach, how do you retrain a group of recruiters that already is kind of like, I don't want to say established, but kind of in their in their rut of where they're what they're doing?
Well, are you asking me that as an owner of a company that has those people or as a trainer?
So I'm asking you that as an owner of a company that has people, but I also want to re-ask that again in the same perspective. If you're a solo recruiter or you're working at an agency, but you want to redo your approaches and like revitalize or revamp your what you're
Okay,
doing.
got it. As an owner, I don't want to touch the people that are billing 400 grand or above. They've earned their ability to do it the way that they're doing it, whether or not that's the way that I trained them or what they brought with them, right?
Mhm.
I may expose them to the fact that if you're open to some new ideas, there may be a guy that you might listen to that may crack open a new approach for you. But if you're not in that category as an owner, anybody that has been around for, say, 2 years or less, take one step forward if you don't have an interest in making more money. Let me know who you guys are. Okay. Everybody else, we're going to get exposure to some new ideas. So that's the perspective that my clients have. From a training perspective, when I get a group of seniors that are in a program with me, I start to ask them questions about how unique do you think that you sound in the way in which you communicate to people or the way in which you write your in-mails. Well, I'm really pretty unique. I mean, you know, that's why I'm as good as I am. So then I got 30 people in front of me in thumbnails, and I ask 10 of them to read to me the last in-mail that they sent, and they all sound friggin' identical. And then I ask them to leave me the voicemail message that they typically leave. Okay. Give me your voicemail for a second. So you're trying to get a guy on the phone that you want to recruit. Okay. This is Peter. I'm not at my desk. Leave me a message. If it's good enough, I'll call you back. Beep. Go.
Oh, hey, Peter, this is Benjamin. I am actually working with a three-letter agency on a program that's actually just getting started off. That's going to be an important part of our national security. I'd love to chat with you about the opportunity. Give me a call back at da 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 da.
Okay. So the first thing that I know is you're a recruiter,
Hmm.
right? So I have to make a decision. Do I need a recruiter or don't I need a recruiter? And
Correct.
80% of people don't need a recruiter at the time of that message, which is why we only get 10 to 20% return messages or return phone calls on a message, right? The second thing is all you have done is told me the problem that you're trying to fill for yourself. I have a client that is looking for, and you can make it sexy, you know, they're first to market, there's, national defense, nobody's going to get nuked as a result of this client, da 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 da, right? But it's all your stuff. It's all a call for you and your client. Okay. Ben, you and I don't know each other, and this call may be a little bit unfair because I have so much more knowledge about you right now than you do about me. But not more than 20 minutes ago, I came out of a meeting with an individual, and towards the end of that meeting, you became the focal point of our conversation, and it motivated my phone call. The nature of the call is just a little bit time sensitive. It's not life changing, but if you do have the ability to call me before 2 today, I'd be most appreciative. And if not, I understand I'm reaching you out of the blue. I'm going to be out of pocket after 2 o'clock, but tomorrow morning until 10, I'm good. Here's my number. What are you going to do?
I mean, that would be halfway curious. Like, what the fuck does he have?
So you call back. But what do you mean, what does he have? You don't even know what I do for a living,
Yeah.
right? You just want to know, why was I the focal point of a conversation? Okay.
Hmm.
And so then we have the conversation. And I still don't tell him I'm a recruiter. I work for an organization that is hired by what many people consider to be some of the strongest governmental agencies. I'm customizing this to what you do within the defense arena. Okay. And these particular agencies have become successful because of one primary fact, and that is they've set the bar for the skill sets of the people that they hire within the top 15 percentile of that whole genre of skill set. And they don't compromise. My company happens to be the company that they use to cherry pick that talent for them when their own HR departments or other agencies don't have the reach to find people at that skill level. So now you know I'm a headhunter, but I've explained it to you differently, right? It's all, obviously I'm biased, but it's all about phraseology. It's all about sounding unique, you know. What what percentage, I know you're supposed to be doing the interview, but I've forgotten about that. What percentage of success in your mind comes to a recruiter as a result of the technology, the stack that they're using, their ATS, their sourcing technology, and so forth, versus what comes out of their mouth?
So, like, that's a very interesting thought, just how technology has changed. And if you asked me that question a year and a half ago during the tech boom and everything, I could probably point to plenty of people where I would say 75% of their success is technology. But now that the tech boom and the market has slowed and the market has changed, it's the people that are having the conversations and that are building the relationships are the ones that are seeing almost like exponential success compared to those that are still relying way more on technology to solve their problems. So I would almost say like now it's 25% of technology.
Well, in my opinion, it's always been that split of ratio, because you can have the greatest technology in the world that identifies the right candidate and then shoots out this incredibly well-written AI produced in-mail to them that stimulates their beautifully produced AI response to you, okay, which we never think they use. But if we don't understand what their motivation is for responding, then we don't know how to solve the problem that they're looking to solve in getting a new job. Okay. So now my question would be, what percentage of time do you think owners train their people on the humanistic side, the non-technology side, the digging for the wound, the ability to have sophisticated and elegant conversation with people? What percentage of time do you think people spend teaching that anymore?
I'm going to go on like the out of all the training time, probably 5% because how often are, you as a recruiter, whether you're at an agency, you're an owner or whatever desk you are, you're getting pitched on all these AI solutions on a constant basis. So I think a lot of people think, you know, I think AI is going to be a huge player, but at the same time, it's a technology is going to fix everything. The technology is going to help my people build more.
I agree. And most people are justified in saying that, because most people that are working a desk right now are your age or a little younger. And so technology has driven everything for them, right? I mean, they break up with their partner by texting. It's just we get a chance to hide behind something that muffles the emotionalism that could bounce off of somebody and come back to us by it being in text. Okay. So it's justifiable for people, you know, that are millennials or Gen Zs to feel that way. I hold nothing against them for that. But when they are taught that there's another part of this that actually affects the trust and the loyalty that somebody extends to you as they develop through their career and they ultimately become a manager and say, I want Ben to find me people because I've witnessed how he's found me a job and how real he is with me and how he listens and yada, yada, yada. That's how you build these long-term. So people can be taught that. They really can. But you first have to find out whether or not people have the ability to communicate verbally well. Then you can change the content of what they say. But there's a ton of people that just don't communicate verbally well anymore. They're sporadic. So when I'm talking, it's kind of like if I was like, okay, let me just put it like this way. All right. So a couple of weeks ago, there are people that talk like that. Everything's broken up, right? And they're hard to follow. And so these are things that need to be tested before somebody takes the job of a recruiter. So once we know that their verbal presentation is logical, it's chronological, it's sequential, things, they can color their words that cause people to smile or to feel emotions, then we can teach them the content, you know, that we can do. But it's not going that way right now, unless you get trained in Morgan methodology.
Well, Peter, for people that want to follow you, what's the best way for them to follow you?
Morgan CG, MORGAN CG for consultinggroup.com. And I think by the time that you may air this, our new website will be completed. And we tried something pretty different on this new website. Most websites are designed to steer people to buying stuff and to services. You will be steered to buying stuff on ours as well, but you may also use our new website as a training tool for you. So there are things where you don't have to buy anything, but you will learn a ton of stuff. It's going to be very cool. It's, again, watch the crowd move in the opposite direction. We put together something that's very, very different from typical websites. So yeah, they can go there and or they can email me or whatever. If they want, they'll find me. Thanks,
That's
man.
awesome. Well, Peter, thanks for coming on, man. This was great.
I loved it. Okay, we'll talk to you later.